myself, I was in college from 67 to 71, and the first Earth Day was 1970, and it's been 54 years. So where are we? You know, what I'm going to do is go into a little reality, but not get into the gloom and doom thing. We're going to move to at the end to what kinds of actions can be taken to resolve climate change. Primarily, I started out this winter, I wanted to do the entire environmental footprint. I was getting up to 100 slides. And I said, well, of all the environmental footprints out there, which one can we actually do something about? And climate change, we do have strategies to deal with it. So even the technology is out there. So I picked that one. That'll be the main focus. Okay. This is one of the books that, yeah.
Yeah. This is one of the books that we're quoting, and we're donating this to the Green Team shelf in the library. It's a very good book if anyone has the time to read it. And I just wanted to take one quote out of it. It's in the yellow box there. The planet is warming. That's a fact. It's because of us. That's a fact. We're sure. There's no doubt. It's bad. It's getting worse, but we can fix it. So hang on till the end as we talk about what you can do.
Okay. So I got to turn this out. So we're going to listen to Gaylord Nelson back in 1970 to start with. For those, of course, you guys probably are pretty familiar with that, judging from the average age in here.
Yeah, you may have heard of Gaylord Nelson.
Okay, so
ready to mute.
Is an environment of decency, equality, and mutual respect for all human beings and all other living creatures. Our goal is a decent environment in its broadest and deepest sense, and it will require a long, sustained political, moral, ethical, and financial commitment far beyond any commitment ever made by any society in the history of man.
My name is Tia Nelson. I am the daughter of Gaylord Nelson, the founder of Earth Day. My father was an extraordinary dad. He was an extraordinary leader. Growing up as his daughter, it was mostly a great privilege, but also I felt a heavy sense of duty to public service and to making a difference with my life. I work for the Outrider Foundation. Our goal is to educate people about big global challenges like climate change. One of my favorite quotes from my father was delivered on the eve of the first Earth Day in 1970. He said, "Ecology is a big science,
not a narrow one. It's a big concept, and it is concerned with all the ramifications of all the relationships of all living creatures to each other and their environment."
So when he talked about the environment, he talked about ecology and environment in the broadest sense, in the most inclusive sense. That idea resonated with students across the country. Collectively, they made a difference that was unforeseeable.
This movement and this fight is about all of us, because what is more fundamental than the air that we breathe, than water, than the soil that we stand on, than the land that we love? Like, what is more fundamental to every single one of us than that? My name is Varshini Prakash. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I am one of the co-founders of Sunrise Movement. We are building a movement of young people all across this nation to stop the climate crisis and create millions of good jobs for our generation in the process. And when I began looking back into what the first Earth Day was like, what it meant, the level of people who got involved, the kind of political action, I think for me, Earth Day now is about getting back to our roots.
My father was brilliant at working across the aisle to build consensus. He knew when to compromise, he knew when to stick to his principles. Think of all of the important environmental laws that were passed after that first Earth Day, and they were passed with significant support from both parties.
Terry, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but you're muted somehow. I can't hear you. Cammie, can you hear him?
No, I can't hear anything.
Okay.
There we
So
go.
I need to go.
Okay,
There we
now
go.
can you
It's
hear?
done.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes. I can.
Okay.
So just repeat that in the 1970s, we had legislation.
Yeah, legislation. In 1980s, something changed. I tried to be non-political on this, but there was one of the political parties, changed the whole priorities around to promote growth, economic growth, at the expense of the environment. It was felt that there were too many regulations, and it was time to go after those regulations and change them to get the economy going again. There was also at that time during the 1980s, in the Reagan era, a rejection of science, just giving science a bad name, saying don't listen to the science, and that has precipitated all the way up into the Trump era. I love this Waldo Leopold quote. One of the penalties of an ecological education is that one lives in a world of wounds. And I guess my core values were formed during that period of time that I was in college, and then I got my master's in environmental education, and to have some knowledge of those kinds of things. When I look at the world, I see wounds. And that's the disadvantage of being educated in that area. But as things change, death and destruction occur, civilizations fall, and so forth, creation continues. Everybody thinks that creation is something that happened a long time ago, but creation will continue. It is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you to at liberty to neglect it, the work that needs to be done. So I was going to get into a lot of terminology, and then I cut a whole bunch of that out. So this is fairly simple. Up until 1970, we were in ecological reserve. In other words, nature was regenerating itself, and we weren't consuming too many resources. But then you get into the ecological deficit, we started consuming more resources than nature could regenerate. And the United States, if you look at this chart, the way we live would take 5 Earths. So we're the biggest, and if it goes right down, and if you'd average that for the world needs 1.75 Earths right now, the way things are going. So, and I like this quote: "It's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it." And I don't know if you remember, Michael Dowd was here in 2017.
2017 in October.
He died in October. He was helping his friend clean a table off. He fell, he hit his head. He didn't want to go to the doctor. He went to bed and he died during the night, which is unfortunate. He was only 63 years old.
Oh my God.
But it's nearly, he said, well, it's nearly impossible to get someone to understand what is collapsing their world and creating hell on earth when the answer is their own civilization. And civilizations don't last forever. The average civilization it's covered up there. I think it's 336 years is the average civilization. And many causes why civilizations fail. And these are the different ones.
This is
So
some of the causes.
some of the causes, yeah. This book is my favorite. Oddly, this was written in written by William Canton. He was a forester professor out on the West Coast. And what he did in 1980, when he saw what was happening, and it was after the oil crisis and everything else, and 1980s came, and he said, whoa, we need to wake up people. This book covers how we got into the predicament that we're in. Politically, environmentally, it's fantastic. It's ecologically based. And I had it in 1980. So, and everything that he predicted up until predicted ahead has happened. He said it's going to happen if you don't do something. So, excellent book. Overshoot by the means exceeding the carrying capacity of the world or any environment. For instance, if in a deer stand, if a wintering deer herd runs out of food, what happens? There weren't enough resources to sustain. So, an example. Yeah, and our core ecological problem is not climate change. It's overshoot, of which global warming is a symptom. This chart is this will put some fear into you, possibly. A lot of scientists think that we were out of control. These things are happening. 73 years ago was out of control, 1950. And then 23 years ago, many of them said, so out of control that it's unstoppable at this point. So, some people will say, well, geez, I'm just going to give up and just enjoy my days. We can't do that. We have to have some hope.
There's new technology.
Yeah, there's new technologies out there. A lot of the new technologies, though, make climate warming worse. And so it's a tough situation. Sooner or later, we have to sit down at a banquet of consequences. Robert Louis Stevenson. I wanted to put a little bit in here on biodiversity. You guys know what that is.
Preaching to
But
the
there's-
choir here.
Yeah, but
Earth is full of life. There are thousands of habitats and ecosystems, and millions of species of animals, plants, fungi, and insects. This is biodiversity, the sum total of all different life on Earth. Every one of these species depends on all the others for survival, including ourselves. We need trees that clean our air and water, animals and plants that provide us with food, medicine, and biofuels, and insects that pollinate our crops. The more biodiversity there is, the more resilient the environment is. But when this delicate balance is upset, entire ecosystems can collapse. And right now, that is exactly what's happening. As our society and demand for resources grows, our activities are causing unprecedented habitat destruction all over the world, triggering what some call the sixth mass extinction. In just the last 50 years, wildlife populations have been reduced by 60%. 40% of the world's plant species are also at risk, and the insect population is collapsing globally. Loss of biodiversity is perhaps the biggest consequence of the climate crisis. It threatens our food supply, destabilizes our ecosystems, and increases the risk of disasters, such as a global pandemic. Even though a lot of damage has already been done, not all is lost. In fact, we have what it takes to fix this. Despite the rapid biodiversity loss we are experiencing, our world has a remarkable capacity to adapt and recover quickly through built-in self-healing mechanisms. If we embrace sustainable development policies, research has found that most ecosystems can recover within just one lifetime. At One Tree Planted, we work with our partners to restore forest ecosystems by planting millions of trees all over the world. The movement to preserve our biodiversity is growing every day, and you can be a part of it. Join us and help us keep our planet full of life.
And that the team supports when we plant trees, one tree planting.
And Little Atlas received one today.
Yes.
when we talk about the carbon footprint, it's not just CO2. I'll show you in the next slide. It's all of these gases, and what they've done is convert the measurements of the other gases. There's about 5 gases that are severe. They convert it to carbon equivalents. So when they say carbon, they're talking carbon. They're not talking about just carbon dioxide. They're talking about methane, nitrous oxide, and several others. The average carbon footprint for a person in the United States is 16 metric tons. The goal is to get down to 2 metric tons.
And that's because of our televisions, driving cars.
Our lifestyle,
Okay.
It's because of our privilege.
our
The
privilege.
wealthy countries are.
Wealthy people
doing
have the
most
biggest
damage.
carbon footprints because they're traveling more, where they have, and it's the people that can't afford to travel or go anywhere that are suffering because of our excess emission of CO2. This is a little hard to read, but the methane cycle. The problem with methane is it's 84 times more potent than CO2 as far as harnessing the heat. But if you look at well, the farm animals, anaerobic, aerobic bacteria, landfills, burning, prescribed burnings. There's a lot of sources where all this methane, and the problem too with the permafrost thawing out up north is it's emitting methane also. So as the globe heats up,
It
gets worse.
increases.
Look at agriculture and soil management. 73% of the nitrous oxide comes from that sector. So what I want to do is show a couple slides on regeneration agriculture. But here's the emissions from 1940 up to here. Do you know why this dip is up here at 2020? Pandemic. Kicking it down a little bit. Another chart that shows gas emissions in economic sectors that are listed there. And look at the beef. We don't have any farmers in here, do we? Greenhouse gas emissions. Take a look at beef up here. Beef?
Dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate. The problem with dark chocolate is that what they're doing is where these cocoa trees grow, they're cutting down everything else and creating monocultures of chocolate.
However, fair trade
Agriculture.
chocolate is a better way to grow chocolate because it's grown in shade.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And with climate change, where these chocolate, what do you call it, fields and so forth are, because of climate change, they're going to not be able to produce chocolate anymore. We're seeing that with coffee now, in Central America.
They're predicting coffee, chocolate shortages,
Right.
lots of shortages.
And food waste.
In fact,
Yes.
one of the big concerns that I see, like even with trees, there's certain species of trees now, they're not going to be able to grow in the zone they're in. And they're not just going to get up and walk to the next zone. We're going to need people to move vegetation with the climate.
Michael Dowd's wife,
Michael Todd's
Connie,
wife, that was her.
she's moving trees. She's taking seeds from one growing zone and moving them to the next growing zone to plant them now because she sees what's coming.
Those of you that are vegetarians, this is probably one of the reasons you decided to be a vegetarian, right here. You know, beef is very resource intensive. It takes a lot of land. If you take the protein that you get from meat and compare it to the protein you can get from plants, beef requires 20 times more land and emits 20 times more greenhouse emissions per gram of edible protein than common plant proteins. These are some of the impacting factors of climate change. Coastal areas, sea level rises. I just went to a talk down in Utah from a scientist from Antarctica. He said if Antarctica entirely melted, the level of the ocean would be chest high on the Statue of Liberty. You talk about water. Maybe Noah had the right idea. I don't know. Loss of capacity to work due to heat. More wars to gain access to limited resources. You see that with Russia right now. They have their eye on Ukraine, you know. There's some really valuable land there as far as resources. Fresh water will be in short supply. Diseases spread due to higher temperatures. Extreme meteorological phenomenon cause widespread poverty. And again, you know, it's the people that are most hurt, are the people living in the lowlands that will become flooded. Prices of foodstuff will go up, shrinking productivity. This is an interesting thing. It's showing how from 1880 up to present, how the heat has increased. So that's, I know some people are saying, well, what's 1 or 2 degrees Celsius? It's a lot, a lot. We want to hold it down to 1.5 max. What happens at 2 more degrees Celsius is just catastrophic globally. Okay, this is the book that,
I held it up.
yeah, yep.
It's from this.
Yeah, the part of the title is How to Be a Human in a Warming World. Really insightful and encouraging. Yeah, I think we pretty much mentioned both of those. So, and now we've talked about all this negative stuff. Where do we go from here? Do we change our priorities and behaviors? Just hide somewhere tonight? It's not having those crazy Democrats. Or to become more flexible with our compassion for each other. And that's this PhD lady
Author, yeah.
thinks that's where the solution is with how we think about other people, and even people we don't know, how we interact with each other. And she talks about the 5 stages of facing your fears. We're all start out in a state of ignorance. Climate change, you remember when people didn't believe it, didn't want to learn about it, avoid it. Maybe if they would avoid it, it would be too overwhelming to deal with it. Doom.
Getting depressed over it.
Depressed. I've gone through so many feelings on this. And how to deal with the feelings. Using mindfulness. In Utah, what's real big right now is mindfulness gatherings. People sit there and do mindful. I can't. I've tried it. But build up physical health, eat healthy, enjoy music, wine, laughter, and tears with your best friends. It's real important to keep contact with other people to deal with these feelings. Here's where we want to be. And this is where I hope at the end of this, you'll be able to get through all this into purpose. It's your core values. It really comes down to core values. You set direction you think is right. Pursuing purpose is part of achieving meaning. And the next one, oh yeah, I just wanted to throw in this regenerative agriculture. It's something I'm interested in.
Teaching farmers to grow more sustainably.
Yeah. Like no-tilling, rotating crops, so forth. Fertilizers, a big one. Fertilizers, pesticides, Roundup, anhydrous ammonia. I mean, there's just a lot to talk about in the farming sector, and a lot to be done to cut down some of that carbon emission.
Terry, are you aware of any movements? Because I know in southwestern Wisconsin, I think, there's a real push to against the CAFOs and they have that whole
Oh.
collective of,
Yeah,
I forget what it's called.
Community supported
Yeah.
agriculture.
Yeah, they actually have a logo and all of you, when you buy, you're buying from
when
them.
this logo will ask Mark, that's kind of his
What is
area.
what is that area called though? It's down in the southwestern part of the state where they mostly have organic. Is it
Driftless area?
Yeah, but is it the organic?
I think it is related to organic.
Organic valley.
Okay, I guess we'll hold our questions to the end so I get through that. We get a late start here.
There'll be time to talk about it.
Yeah. Again, those of us that have power and privilege we're the most responsible human beings on this planet, responsible for the global warming. Somehow we need to accept our personal responsibility. Flying is probably the worst thing you can do to add to the emissions. And if you're a person that's flying someplace every month, you're making a big impact. It's one of the biggest. I'm going to let these scroll in, but this is core values that we'd like to see. And I don't know, can you read those okay?
Yep.
Okay. And this book here by Dr. Nicholas, she really goes into this stuff, and she does a really good job with it. It's all people skills, kind of. I love the Swedish philosophy, and there's a name for that. What is enough? Well, whatever's sufficient.
Starts with H.
Yeah.
HYGG.
That's Denmark.
Oh.
Huga.
Yeah,
That's different. It's just that I think in the Scandinavian countries, there's less need for things. There's just enough is enough. Live comfortably, but
when you
sustainably.
think about yourself, we need people that understand what they're strong at and what they're capable of doing and what they enjoy doing, what's fun for them, what's valuable. Those are the volunteers we need, because it's easy to you'll burn out if you don't. If you actually volunteer to do something that you don't like, it's very hard on you. Yeah, and community systems, I think Bart's going to talk about that here. Never stop asking what you should do when you grow up. Yeah. All jobs must be environmentally compatible, support environmentally friendly industries, sustainable living. This is probably, Barb said I should take this out.
No, I said a lot of people younger than us wouldn't even know what CPG means.
Back when I was in college, CPG, we all zero population growth. But in 1974, the Pope said, that is so
Wrong.
And
it disappeared.
the Pope, yeah, you don't even hear, a lot of people, you don't hear about ZPG anymore.
Was it?
Understanding the facts of the world reality is in my own family, my relatives and so forth, you can't really talk about reality. Yeah, they don't know. No. In fact, somebody just told me yesterday, one of them said, well, there is no such thing as truth anymore.
Wow.
There are some
back when Jesus was.
There is evidence. There are some faiths and some religions that believe we do not have to be concerned about this because God will take care of all.
God is in
That's
control.
scary.
God is in control.
I feel that we are the hands of Jesus and we are needing to do
Yeah.
what needs to be done. So there's quite a difference.
Sadly, my sisters are in
Yeah.
that realm. Well, God is in control, you know, and your reward will come in the afterlife. All people are equal worth. This is the author, and
Of this
she's
book.
got a little bit of a
To
story.
the morning, whatever it is. I will just say before I read this very short passage, one thing that pleasantly surprised me in writing and researching this book was some recent research showing that actually we will see, if we actually make the changes that are necessary, we will start to see temperature stabilize relatively quickly. So when I was in grad school, we had the misunderstanding that even after emissions go to zero, there will still be a lot more warming locked in. And one of the few pieces of good climate news that I can think of in recent memory is new studies showing that that is unlikely to be the case, that actually once emissions go to zero, we're likely to see temperatures stabilize relatively quickly. So we can actually see that, but as it doesn't undermine the point of the importance of future generations. But current generations also matter a lot and will benefit from it. So cathedral thinking. Each morning I walk to work. I pass a cathedral built almost 900 years ago. Thousands of people contributed to building something beautiful they would never live to see finished. History has forgotten their names. Local legend says the cathedral was built by a giant named Finn. In today's 24-hour news cycles and clickbait wars, it seems impossible to imagine a project that would capture and sustain and renew the energy of so many generations. But in Barcelona today, a great cathedral is rising. A man with a love of geometry and myth imagined something no one else thought possible. Antoni Gaudí helped build the foundation in his lifetime. He hung bags of sand from strings to work out the weight bearing of the arches he would not live to see built. 5 generations ago, he imagined the rainbow stained glass windows whose beauty makes my heart ache. When I visited La Sagrada Familia Basilica, the sacred space was full of the whine and buzz of power tools, building the dead man's dream, now also the dream of many who came after him. It is due for completion in the next decade, 100 years after its architect died. And for untold generations after that, people can stare and wonder at this space that merges nature and mathematics to make something both human and sublime. Climate stabilization is our generation's cathedral to build. Instead of bricks and mortar, our cathedral must be built from life itself, harnessing regeneration to leave a thriving, living world and a good life for ourselves and for future generations as the mark of our time on Earth. We need cathedral thinking to stop climate change. Collectively working toward a transcendent purpose we may or may not live to see accomplished, but that will outlive us all. Thank you.
This picture warms my heart because it takes, in the past, we've all been bringing reusable grocery bags to the store and saying no to plastic straws and recycling and using rechargeable batteries and such. But it's all individual things, and I'm not saying to stop any of that, but it's not nearly enough. It's a drop in the bucket. So collectively, we can do so much more. And this church exemplifies that. We are collectively helping people grow their own food organically in our community garden. We have a prairie that we've established, and we're modeling for the rest of the community and for friends and neighbors and people who see pictures on Facebook what can be done. And we have friends of the green team that are joining our green team. Our green team is a group of about 5 people that are working as hard as we can to do as much as we can to model for others and to encourage people to live sustainably. But we need lots of friends, and we have a pizza party coming up on Wednesday night, and we invite anybody who'd like to be a friend of the green team to join us at our pizza party. So there are things we can do collectively that make a huge difference.
And we can learn about those things at the pizza party.
Yes,
It
and what time?
starts at 5:30.
5:30 to 7 on Wednesday evening. Let us know if you're coming. We want to have enough pizza.
This is an excellent clip that I just came across a couple days ago. And it's really worth listening to. It's 10 minutes long. It's very good.
People often ask me what they can do to help address the climate crisis. But what they usually mean is what's one quick, easy, simple thing they can do. Well, that particular ship has sailed. The climate challenge is gargantuan, thanks largely to fossil fuel executives and the PR firms and politicians doing their bidding. We need to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions from electricity, transportation, agriculture, industry, and buildings. We need to protect and restore ecosystems. We need to change society, policy, economy, and culture. This is about transformation, and the stakes for humanity are greater than my heart and mind can fully fathom. So I find the best way to cope with this is to avoid dwelling on the terrifying scientific projections and instead pivot quickly to solutions. Now, the climate movement and the media all too often ask each of us to do the same things, to vote, protest, donate, spread the word, lower our carbon footprint. That term, by the way, carbon footprint, was popularized by fossil fuel corporations in an attempt to put the blame on us as individuals. But yes, it is good to do those things. I do those things. However, all too rarely are we asked to contribute our special talents, our superpowers to climate solutions. And what a failing, for that would actually enable the radical changes we need. So, where do we each begin? Here's my best answer. A Venn diagram. The first circle is, what are you good at? What are your areas of expertise? What can you bring to the table? Think about your skills, resources, and networks. The second circle is, what is the work that needs doing? Are there particular climate and justice solutions that you're keen on? Think about systems level changes, things that can replicate or scale, things like composting initiatives, insulating buildings, restoring wetlands, getting climate candidates elected, and electrifying everything. There are heaps of options. The third circle is, what brings you joy or satisfaction? There is so much work to be done. Please do not choose something that makes you miserable. This is the long haul, so it's critical to avoid burnout. Choose things that enliven you. The goal is to be at the heart of this Venn diagram for as many minutes of your life as you can. If you're familiar with the Japanese concept of ikigai for finding your purpose, you can consider this a simplified, climate-focused version of that. Taking this approach will enable way more progress on climate solutions than if we each obsess about our individual footprints. For example, 9 months after being inspired when I took him to his first climate protest, Boris Kentov, a financial tech executive, launched a climate impact investing fund. And honestly, I don't care if Boris never goes to another protest again. Sarah Stillman, a journalist who covers systemic injustices in immigration and workers' rights, has started including a deep and nuanced climate context for these issues in her reporting. And my own mother, a retired English teacher, became a small but mighty part of getting fracking banned in New York State, and is now mothering chickens and converting her lawn into a model for small-scale regenerative farming. I call these climate action Venn diagrams, and having now seen many of them, endearing crayon versions by children, delightfully detailed versions by adults, this is one of my favorites. I have a few additional parameters to offer before you draw your own. This does not necessarily mean you should quit your job or go start a nonprofit. Quite possibly, you are most powerful in your existing roles where you already have specialized knowledge and robust networks. So how might you lean into those talents? Can you help your town, company, church, or school charge ahead with climate solutions? Because what we need is change in every sector and in every community. And be gentle with yourself on the "what are you good at" question. Set your insecurities aside and simply consider what you have to offer. Over the last year since I've been sharing this concept, lots of people have been drawing their own and posting them on Instagram. It's been super exciting to see what people have been coming up with. But I've noticed that a lot of them are landing on some version of communicate about climate. Now, I fully appreciate the irony, given that I am standing here talking to you about climate, but we can't all just talk about it. We need doers. We need mutual aid organizers and city council members. We need green building retrofitters and wind turbine installers and bike lane planners. We need culture shapers and policy nerds. We need employees pushing their corporate employers to change. Here's where I will offer what I consider to be the sexiest word in the English language: implementation. Because we already have most of the solutions we need. We need to get to work and to pick up the pace. We need to build the biggest, strongest team possible to tackle this most enormous challenge humanity has ever faced. Another word I love that is perfect for this moment is leaderful. I learned this term from Black Lives Matter activists who use it as an organizing principle. Social movements can be fragile when they're helmed by a few prominent leaders. We need many leaders to accelerate this transformation from a fossil-fueled economy to a regenerative one. Maybe you are one of those leaders, or maybe you don't want to be out front. That is more than okay. This is not about being a hero or an influencer. This is about being useful and advancing solutions. Contribute to an existing effort, make it possible, build the website, raise the funds, plan the events, recruit the talent. The question should not merely be, what can I do to help address the climate crisis, but what can we do together? Join something. And if you need a bit of inspiration, here is a list of some climate solutions to consider. So what will you do? Or how will you step it up? Actually draw this out. What are you good at? What is the work that needs doing? And what brings you joy? Also, try to avoid diagramming your way to what you're already doing. Think about this expansively. Start with a blank slate and consider how you can make your best impact. Remember, this is about action. I've emphasized the importance of everyone contributing to climate solutions. So before I close, I want to mention one of the major barriers to participation: inequality. Perhaps you know that around the world, it's people of color who are most heavily impacted by the effects of climate change, whether that's air pollution, hurricanes, droughts, or floods. But you may not know that it is also people of color who are most concerned about climate and most likely to want to be a part of the solutions. In the US, where we have robust data on this, 49% of white Americans are concerned about climate, compared to 57% of Black Americans and 69% of Latinx Americans. Imagine the huge and additional contributions these folks could make if unburdened from the dangerous distraction that is racism. And goodness, do we need all of that ingenuity and leadership. In other words, help us help you. Help us all save the planet. My last challenge to you then, since all our fates are intertwined, is in addition to leveraging your talents, can you help others in using theirs? And let's work to demolish the societal barriers that prevent people from fully devoting themselves to climate solutions. This is what I know. There are innumerable possible futures. I know we each get some say in which future we'll collectively have and a chance to help build it. I know that every 1/10 of a degree of warming we prevent, every centimeter of sea level rise we avoid, every bit of nature we protect and restore matters. I know that our actions add up. This is an invitation. Find your role if you haven't already. Encourage others to find theirs. Averting climate catastrophe. This is the work of our lifetimes. Thank you.
So she had a couple screens on there that she ripped through, and so I made a copy of it. But these are some key climate solutions. And by the way, if anybody wants a PDF of this presentation, I can
There's a
send it to you.
clipboard that you can sign up for it,
But in the interest of time, I wanted to spend some time on that, but
but we're out of time.
yeah, okay. This is a kind of a motivator for children. This gal through PBS created this, and it's.
In first grade, above the cubbies where we kept our snow boots and mittens, big Comic Sans letters spelled out "Remember to recycle" and "Last one out turns off the light." These are the kinds of things recommended by science textbooks, blogs, and even the US Environmental Protection Agency as ways to reduce your personal impact on the climate. And they're pretty easy to do. On average, in the US, turning off the lights when you aren't in a room can save about 1/3 a kilogram of carbon dioxide per day. Using a reusable shopping bag every time you go to the store saves 5 kilograms a year. Drying clothes on a line instead of in a dryer saves around 200 kilograms per year. But compare that to the average carbon footprint of a person in the US. 16.5 tons a year. Tons! So what can you actually do to make a meaningful difference? Living car-free keeps 2.4 tons of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere every year. But getting rid of your car maybe isn't feasible. People in rural or suburban areas have to drive more, but that's a big part of why they produce double the per capita emissions compared to people in urban areas. Driving an electric car can save about a ton of carbon dioxide a year, but that still doesn't have as much of an impact as just not driving. That will require big changes in how we live. Getting rid of your car is technically an individual choice, but it really requires cultural change. That isn't easy, but we've done it before. I can both vote and wear pants now. It's pretty amazing that we're able to hop on a plane and get anywhere in the world in a day. But try turning your next big holiday into a staycation. You could avoid up to 2.8 tons of carbon emissions by skipping that flight. But until we invent teleportation, flying is really the only fast way to travel long distances to see family and do business stuff. There's really no practical way to fly that doesn't put hundreds of kilograms of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Globally, raising livestock is on par with transportation when it comes to greenhouse gases. But you and your neighbors are eating about 20% less beef than you were 15 years ago. That's kept 185 million tons of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And today, 1 in 16 people in the United States say that they are vegan or eat plant-based diets. If you cut meat out of your diet, that's 800 kilograms of carbon dioxide kept out of the atmosphere every year. The choices you make about what you eat are ways to impact the climate every day. Quick recap. Get rid of your car, save 2.4 tons. Fly less, save up to 2.8 tons per trip. Stop eating meat, probably reduce your emissions by around a ton. But here's a really tough one. If you choose to have 1 fewer child, that saves on average 60 tons of carbon dioxide per year. This is far and away the most effective thing you or I or anyone in the developed world could do to reduce our emissions. I'm definitely not going to stand here and tell you not to have children. Family planning is a family thing. And fewer kids is already the trend in most nations. As a population gets healthier and more educated, birth rates drop as a rule. These are all huge life changes that don't always come easy. There's a lot of culture wrapped up in what we eat, how we get around, and what our families look like. Here's a choice that's a little simpler. In a lot of places, families can choose to buy green energy that doesn't contribute to more emissions. This is surprisingly easy. For me, all I had to do was log into my account with my energy provider and select the renewables box. Now I get a monthly email telling me how much carbon dioxide I didn't put in the atmosphere. In some places, this may up your energy bill, but if you got some extra change lying around, I highly recommend throwing it at solar panels. But don't actually throw it at solar panels. From small and easy things like reusing shopping bags and turning out the lights to those more challenging, high-impact lifestyle choices like what we eat and how we travel. We all have real power to change our culture and respond to climate change in a meaningful way. Solving this isn't going to be up to any one of us. It'll be up to all of us.
Thanks for watching Hot Mess. If you like what you see, please head over to our Patreon page.
Okay, it's Michael Dowd again. His statement of wisdom, and I really like this. Live life fully, love the life you live, and be the biggest blessing to others that you can, for as long as you can. This is the key to experiencing joy independent of circumstances. And this is a familiar prayer. There's several versions of this. One part, the third section down there is probably one you haven't heard. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace. Yeah, finally we got there.
And we know it's late, but I have Venn diagrams for